Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of High Country Cuts. Before we head to the high desert in Wyoming and start crawling under barbed wire, I needed to make a stop for a breakfast burrito at the famous Prairie Rose in Laramie. I was here at 11 a.m. on a weekday, and every stool and table was full. I hadn't eaten here since 2009, but it rocked, so make sure you put it on your list. By way of background, I lived in Wyoming until I was 6 and have returned every year since. The vastness of the landscape and things like the smell of the sagebrush after a rainstorm have a dedicated place in my heart. Every time I come back, I feel like a kid again, dwarfed by the big sky, tall mountains, and tales of the older generations of my mom's family. I've spent countless hours on highways of the state looking out at sagebrush, popcorn clouds, and that brilliant blue sky. And each year I get to continue returning is a blessing. As far as the fishing, today we are going to hit an extremely remote public fishing easement set among thousands of acres of BLM land. To get to the river, I am going to ditch my car on the side of the sort of maintained dirt road and hike across the sagebrush to get to and from the river. As I walked, it felt shocking that this was the path of the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails. A cold-water trout stream at the end of this hike really did not seem possible. I didn't see another vehicle or person after I left the hardtop highway. As you can see, the river presents itself in a big meadow full of oxbows, overhanging native grasses on the banks, and deep runs. This just looks ideal for trout. So the wind is howling, no rises, there's no hatch coming off at all. What I'm gonna do is throw a size 10 golden stonefly nymph with a mayfly nymph, about size 20 behind that. I just did, I think, something generic gray. The logic here is that it's April, stonefly molt season, we're well into blue wing olive season, and this rig quickly picks up a small, healthy brown trout. Moving upriver, that storm is closing in on me quickly, but this run looks too promising to head for shelter just at this moment. So luckily, I pick up another quick brown here, a little bit bigger and really nice color. Unfortunately, now the storm is on top of me. The wind is so bad, I switched to a streamer. I get no bites. It starts to snow sideways on me, so I decide it's going to be time for a quick break. This run was very promising. Slow, deep, and just beyond where my shadow from the setting sun would hit the water, results in a feisty rainbow. Inserting some gratuitous B-roll here of me crossing the river. As you can see, there's pretty good flow in here for it being in the middle of a desert. This run was very, very deep. The entire width of the river here was actually steep from the bank to the bottom of the river and deep. So I actually couldn't wade this run. I had to fish it from up high on the bank. Obviously, that is a tricky thing to do because a lot of times the fish can see, some shadowy figure moving up above them and it puts them down. So what I'm doing is staying low behind the tall grass that's between me and the water. I think I gave this run 15 casts to make sure I was covering it sufficiently, changing my depth to make sure I was ticking bottom. That patience pays off because this was the biggest fish of the day for me. I thought this was an interesting shot. Here is an example of how I fish some rivers where stealth is paramount. I'm obviously on my knees to keep as low of a profile as possible and keep out of view of the fish. This is a particularly favorite tactic of mine on small alpine streams where you're right there and the fish can see you if you stand up. Caught a fair number of cutthroats this way, but not today. Okay, obviously I found the gate on my way out and I didn't have to risk tearing my waders and net apart by crawling back under that fence. Because I was in such a remote location, I wanted to get back to my car well before dark. So I had a nice hike back to my vehicle and even found some nice quartz pieces, which I failed to take a photo of, but are currently sitting in the middle of my dining room table at the not pleasure of my wife. At this point, with a little daylight left, I add a little pond action that's got stocked rainbows and cutthroats in it to round out the day. There was a prolific midge hatch going, and you can see there's rises all over the lake. But I felt like throwing something a little bigger. So I did a tan chubby Chernobyl with a Perdigon 8 inches underneath that, and that was a meal ticket. When the wind picked up later, I put a leech under a bobber, and I think I picked one up. I'm not even sure I have that footage in here. But yeah, just a fun little way to end the day. Tuning into another episode of High Country Cuts. I hope you enjoyed this trip through the great state of Wyoming as much as I did. Have a good one.